y'all, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm Ashley, and now that the holidays are upon us, it's time to get serious about our menu planning. Now, a lot of people have the casseroles and the main dishes covered, but what about the fluffy dinner roll? That is my favorite part of Thanksgiving, and I'm going to show you my favorite roll recipe today. Let's get started. I've been making dinner rolls for the holidays for years, and I found that the best roll to make ahead is one that has a lot of moisture. So the rolls that we're going to make today uses a Japanese bread baking technique, which is to create a flour paste in the beginning and incorporate that into the dough. And it adds a lot of moisture, which allows it to carry over to whenever you eat the next day. So we'll go ahead and bake up these rolls today, and then tomorrow, right before the big meal, pop them in the oven right before you're ready to eat dinner, and it'll be like they just came out of the oven the very first time. So let's go ahead and start with making the flour paste. To get started making the paste, we will add flour and water to a microwave safe bowl and mix it together. And then we're going to microwave it in 20-second spurts, and it will turn into a thicker pudding-like consistency, and that's when we'll stop. So it'll take between 40 and 80 seconds to get to that pudding texture. This is what the paste looks like after 20 seconds, so still pretty liquid. And this is what it looks like after 40 seconds. So you can see it's much thicker, like a thick pudding. And when you pick it up and drop it, the mounds will stay on top and not really fold into the rest of the paste. So this is the stage that you want to stop at. This only took me 40 seconds. Now that we have our flour paste ready, we'll go ahead and start building the dough. Put the flour paste into a bowl of a stand mixer. Add 1/2 cup cold milk to the flour paste and whisk to combine. Whisk in 1 whole egg, add 1½ teaspoons of instant yeast, also known as rapid rise. Attach the dough hook to the stand mixer and then add in 2 cups of bread flour. If you're measuring this out with a scale, it's 11 ounces. Mix all the ingredients together over medium-low speed for about 1 to 2 minutes until everything's incorporated. Now that we've started the first stage of the dough, we're going to let it rest for 15 minutes. This is part of the hydration process of baking any kind of bread, also known as autolyse. So we're gonna let it sit for 15 minutes and then we'll add the rest of the dough ingredients. Now that the dough's had a moment to rest, we're going to add the salt and the sugar and mix it on medium speed for about 5 minutes. Continue mixing for another 5 minutes. Now the last step of making this bread dough is to add butter. We're going to be adding in 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and we'll put it in 1 tablespoon at a time. Now this dough is considered an enriched dough, which means that it has sugar and butter included, and that makes for a nice, moist, slightly sweet, fluffy dinner roll. Let's go ahead and start adding the butter, and make sure to use a bowl scraper to scrape the dough around the bowl a couple of times throughout mixing to make sure that we get a fully incorporated dough. Continue mixing for 5 more minutes. Now that our dough's finished mixing, we're going to put it out on a lightly floured counter. And just scrape out the dough. It will be a little tacky, and that's what we want. And then just lightly put flour on your hands We're going to knead this into a little bit of a ball. And do that by rotating it, stretching it, and pulling it over on itself on the center. Rolling a little bit. And then we're going to put it seam side down. So this is the seam here on the bottom, into a greased bowl. Then we're going to gently spray the top. And that will keep the plastic from sticking to the dough in the case that it does if your bowl's kind of small. I used a large bowl here, so it likely won't happen. And then we're going to cover the bowl with plastic wrap and let it sit for about an hour until it doubles in size. So make sure we cover it tightly so that no air comes in. All right, now let's let this rest. Now that the dough has gone through its first rise, we're going to form our individual rolls. Grease a 9-inch cake pan and set it aside. Then turn the dough out onto a counter and press it into an 8 by 9-inch rectangle. Cut the rectangle into 4 equal strips and then cut each strip into 3 equal pieces. Take one piece at a time and press it out into an 8 by 2-inch strip, and with the short side facing you, roll it into a tight little roll. You'll put that into the cake pan that you've greased, and you'll have 10 on the outside and 2 on the inside. All right, now that we've finished making each of the individual rolls, they'll rise for another 45 minutes to an hour until they're about double in size. Now that the rolls have doubled in size for the last rise, we're going to put them in a 375-degree oven with the rack at the lowest position of the oven for 25 to 30 minutes. They'll be a nice deep golden brown when they're done. All right, the rolls are out of the oven and they look delicious. They're a nice deep golden brown color, and we're going to let them cool in the pan for about 3 minutes. Then we'll invert them onto a wire rack and let them finish cooling while we brush them with hot melted butter. The rolls have cooled for about 3 minutes, and now we're going to invert them out onto a wire rack. Now I like to have foil underneath the rolls because I'm going to put hot melted butter all over them, and I want to make sure I don't have a mess and I can just roll it up and throw away the foil rather than having melted butter all over the place. So we'll go ahead and invert these onto the rack. And then I'm going to brush it with the melted butter. We'll let the rolls cool for about 20 minutes and then they can be separated and served up for dinner. Now, if you're making these the day ahead, then go ahead and wrap them in aluminum foil once they come to room temperature. Then the next day, pop them into a 350-degree oven in that aluminum foil pack for about 15 minutes. Take them out of the oven and it'll just be like you've made them fresh that moment. They are so delicious. We're going to make an extra special treat because we are making rolls for the holidays. We're actually going to be making our own butter. Now, if this is way too overwhelming and you just want to start with the bread, of course store-bought butter is just fine. But I think there's something extra special about the holidays, and I like to add a little extra treat to the rolls that we'll be serving. Now, I found a mold at my craft store. This one is kind of for Thanksgiving. It has leaves and acorns, but you can find some with little Santa Clauses or presents if you're doing it for the Christmas season, or if you're making these rolls for Easter, you can find, whatever kind of little mold, like an ice cube tray or candy mold, in your craft store or your grocery store. And we're going to put the butter inside the mold, and so then we have little pats of decorative butter to go with our dinner rolls for the holiday season. Let's get started with making our butter. To start making the butter, we're going to put 3 cups of cold heavy cream into a stand mixer with a whisk attachment. Now we're going to mix this heavy cream for about 6 to 10 minutes until it starts to separate. So you're going to see it go to the stage of about whipped cream, and then it's going to go even further than that, and it'll look like it's almost curdling. That's the point that you want to get to when making your own butter. You're actually separating the buttermilk from the butter solids. So we're going to go ahead and mix this over high speed, again with a whisk attachment, for about 6 to 10 minutes. All right, so you can see that the butter is starting to form because there's liquid down in the bottom and there's solids up top. So we're going to encourage that separation of the solids and the liquids by adding ice cold water. So we're going to slowly add some ice cold water in while it's mixing. Fold in these outside edges. We'll give it one more whirl. Okay, now that the liquids and solids have started to separate, we're going to put it through a fine mesh sieve into a bowl, and that will give us buttermilk and butter solids. So we'll move the mixer over, and we're going to pour the mixture into this fine mesh sieve. You can see it almost looks like curdled milk. So then we're going to work the mixture through the sieve until we have solids only. So this will take a couple of minutes. Okay, once you've pushed through enough liquid through the sieve with the spatula, then it's time to get your hands dirty. So actually take the butter and squeeze it between your hands to kind of make a fist. It's gonna be like playing with Play-Doh. And that will continue to separate the liquid from the solid. So let's get our hands dirty. If this totally freaks you out, you could also do it through a cheesecloth. All right, now that we have most of the liquid separated from the solid into the bowl, we're going to put the solids aside, clean out our mixing bowl, and make sure that it's completely dry. Then we're going to be taking the solid butter, putting it back into the mixing bowl with a paddle attachment, and adding just a little bit of salt so we have a nice creamy salted butter to put into our fall-inspired butter mold. Also, just a tip, this buttermilk that you just finished squeezing is the best buttermilk that you're ever going to have, and I highly recommend making buttermilk biscuits with it. Now that we have the butter solids separated from the butter liquids, we're going to whip the butter solids until it's nice and airy and fluffy. We'll also add just a little bit of salt so we have a nice salted butter to put on our hot dinner rolls. All right, now that it's nice and fluffy, we're going to go ahead and add it into our butter mold. Then I have a couple of tools that we'll use. So of course I have the butter mold that I mentioned that I got from the craft store. And I have a flat spatula for like icing cupcakes, and I also have a bench scraper. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill the butter mold with the fluffy butter, make sure that it's nice and compact, scrape off any extra, and we'll place it into the refrigerator on a plate so then we can put them on a beautiful serving tray with the rolls, and everybody can take their own little pat of butter with their dinner roll as it's passed around the table. So we'll go ahead and scrape off any butter on the attachment, paddle attachment. And this recipe can be doubled or tripled. So if you have a crowd to feed, you can definitely make more butter. And then we'll go ahead and put it into the butter mold. Just kind of make sure that you press the butter down in so each individual shape has a lot in there. And I kind of like to push my finger down on the bottom while I'm pushing the spatula on so I know that it's getting completely filled in all the little cracks, and then I'll scrape it away. Now this is going to go into the refrigerator so it can get nice and firm and we can easily pop them out of the mold. You can keep them in the refrigerator overnight until you're serving the next day. If If you don't have a butter mold, that's totally fine. I recommend taking all of the butter from your mixing bowl and placing it on a piece of plastic wrap and forcing it into a cylinder shape and tightly wrapping it with the plastic wrap. Then keep it in the refrigerator, and when it's time to serve, just unroll it and you'll have a nice chilled butter log that you can slice into individual rounds. I've taken the butter out of the molds and you can see the precious little shapes that they made. This will go great with the rolls. Thanks for joining me today as we made homemade fluffy dinner rolls for the holidays. I really hope you tried making your own butter as well. If you liked today's episode, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. We post new content every week. I hope that you make these rolls for Thanksgiving or Christmas this year and you share them with your friends and family around the table. Until next time, cook great food in your kitchen, share it with those that you love, and we'll see you soon. Today's recipe and ingredients can be found on my website, inashleiskitchen.com.